Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, the latest batch of no-deal Brexit papers have been released by the government, warning of threats to electricity supplies in Northern Ireland, disruption to Eurostar services and online streaming while abroad. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister said she would never agree to a permanent customs union with the EU, amid concern from ministers about Brexit compromises. Paul McNamara has this.
My first 100 days as president have been difficult.
Looking forward to the latest series of your favourite box set? Well, make sure you watch it before you go on holiday to Europe in the event of no-deal Brexit. Brits could be barred from online streaming services while travelling, according to the latest Brexit papers. That's, of course, if you can get on holiday in the first place.
Salut! The journey begins.
Eurostar services could stop, the government papers warn, as new arrangements with individual countries would have to be negotiated to keep trains running. 29 documents were released today, contingency plans for no-deal Brexit, and some warnings were starker than others, like keeping the lights on in Northern Ireland, as laws which cover the trade of electricity with the Republic would cease to exist. What else might cease to exist? 70 existing trade deals with non-EU countries. Not a problem, says the government.
But we are confident that in the event of no deal, not only can we retain the trading relations that we want with those countries from outside the EU that are already trading with the EU, but there'll be huge opportunities from some of those other untapped markets of the future from Asia to Latin America. Not in the papers today, the effect on policing. Over the summer, police chiefs wrote to government warning about the risk of no deal on public safety. Today, a Met Police document reveals more detail. The document, released to Channel 4 News following a Freedom of Information request, is called Brexit and Associated Policing Implications. It reveals that joint manhunts for high-risk individuals could be severely compromised, and gives an example: a joint investigation with Europol, which resulted in a Romanian man being extradited to the UK, who was jailed for trafficking a 14-year-old and 8 other women to work in prostitution, the first prosecution of its kind under the Modern Slavery Act. Today, the DUP met to discuss the backstop, the post-Brexit customs union, if a trade deal can't be done in time. The Prime Minister said today that any union would have to be a time-limited proposal, without actually setting a time limit. Whatever she comes up with, it needs the support of the people here.
I think there could be developments over the weekend in terms of the government's own position and the cabinet. So, you know, we will remain focused on the priorities for Northern Ireland.
A trade deal with the EU is still possible, insists the Prime Minister, and her preferred option, she says. But a deal with Europe is ever more difficult when she still needs to cut deals with her own party and the party propping her government up.
Well, in Brussels, they talk about this time in political negotiations as known as the tunnel. It's dark and no one can hear anything. Well, joining me now is our political correspondent, Michael Crick, who hopefully can shed some light on the situation. Michael, can you?
Well, I wish I could. Certainly, it's crunch time when it comes to not just the Brexit deal, but possibly the future of the cabinet, as cabinet ministers this weekend have to decide whether they're happy with what Theresa May is proposing on the backstop ahead of Tuesday's cabinet meeting. And there's increasing speculation that 3 ministers could possibly resign on this issue. Interestingly, not the old guard male Brexiteers, Michael Gove, Liam Fox, Chris Grayling, but 3 of the newer women cabinet ministers. Andrea Leadsom, the Leader of the House, Penny Mordaunt, the Development Secretary, and Esther McVeigh, the Work and Pensions Secretary, are all cited as possibles who might resign on this. And indeed, an aide to one of those ministers said today that the situation was on a knife edge and that there could be a walkout by one or some of those ministers on Tuesday. Meanwhile, on the other side of the party, what one might call the pro-Remain or pro-EU wing of the party, there's growing disquiet about the activities of Arron Banks, that close chum of Nigel Farage, who spent £7 million of his own money on the Brexit campaign 2 years ago. He has been putting pressure on local parties, encouraging people to join the Conservative Party to try and get some of those MPs deselected. Well, tonight we've learned more details of the next phase of Mr. Banks's campaign and the unprecedented sums of money involved. They call them the Dirty Dozen, 12 Tory MPs accused by Arron Banks and his Blue Wave campaign of betraying Brexit. Now he wants Brexit voters to join their local Conservative parties and dump the Dirty Dozen as MPs.
Are you really just trying to put the frighteners on these people?
Well, there's an element to that. I'm not going to deny that. But I think what it's all about is...
So you want to keep them in line?
Well, no, isn't that what whips do?
Well, isn't that their job, the government's whip's job, not your job?
I think what I would say is that they stood on a manifesto of leaving the customs union, leaving the single market, and now these MPs are campaigning for a second people's vote.
Banks' first target is Damian Collins, MP for Folkestone, which voted 62% for Brexit. He voted Remain, but he's never actually advocated a people's vote and never opposed Brexit legislation. Yet Banks says he's already dispatched to Royal Mail, addressed to every voter in Collins' seat, this letter. Damian Collins is a disgrace, Banks tells voters in Folkestone, and a snake in the grass. And Mr. Collins used his post as chair of the Commons Culture Committee, Banks says, to launch a pathetic witch hunt against Brexit.
Dealt with separately, so it's not...
Last June, Collins summoned Banks to an ill-tempered committee hearing where MPs asked him where his money came from and questioned his business dealings with Russia.
I'm sorry, but there it is.
I mean, this is democracy, isn't it, what Mr. Banks is doing here? He's, encouraging members of the public to join a political party, get involved. You must welcome that.
Well, it's a free country. He's got a right to do that if he wants to. But I would say, what I think this is a very wealthy man, who has taken exception to being questioned in public and has decided to take this out against people like me who he thinks shouldn't be poking our nose into his affairs. But I think he is the biggest donor in British political history. We don't know very much about him and his money and where it comes from, keeps a lot of it offshore in the Isle of Man. I think we should be holding people like that to account. And quite frankly, I don't really care if he takes exception to that. He can send as many letters as he likes. I won't stop doing my job.
The letter Banks says he's sending to the voters in Collins' seat urges them to join the Conservatives to put his position into question.
Arron Banks is spending huge sums on this. £38,000, he says, just to send this letter to the constituents of Folkestone. At the bottom is a chit soliciting further donations to pay for more letters to the other MPs on his so-called Dirty Dozen list. This is a hugely significant development in British politics. Rarely can such money have been spent outside an election at constituency level. Also, recent weeks have seen online ads and social media posts from groups connected to Banks aimed at hundreds of thousands of constituents of the so-called Dirty Dozen, some with links to the sign-up pages for their local Tory parties. Arron Banks gave us this league table, which shows, he claims, which MPs generated the most clicks through from Facebook ads. Top was Anna Soubry, with more than 200 clicks. If only a faction joined, it could change the complexion of her local party. Sixth, with 80 clicks, was Philip Lee.
This is just unacceptable. It's not an appropriate way to behave, and the sort of malign intent of this letter is just not acceptable in the party politics that I believe in.
After Damian Collins, Mr. Banks' most immediate target will be Devon MP Sarah Wollaston.
But she's gone against the will of the people.
Today, this video attacking her was posted by a pro-Brexit news website co-owned by Banks.
If there are enough of us, we can get her deselected.
And he's planning to spend tens of thousands posting a letter to all her constituents in Totnes.
It's going to Sarah Wollaston's constituency shortly as well, and maybe a number of the others. But as I say,
and that's you putting the frighteners on saying
we've actually raised this money from the general public. It's money that's been donated. So Arron Banks has not donated a single penny towards this.
Do you expect people to believe that? You donated what, 6-7 million to the Brexit campaign, and you're now suggesting that here you are, a very, very wealthy man, that none of your money's gone into this?
We can absolutely prove it. We've got the list of small donations. I mean, the LeaveEU was left with nearly 100,000 members. It's got nearly 1.5 million people follow it on social media. The donations came from small people interested in the Brexit campaign.
And you didn't just slip them another, you know, $500,000 or
no
100,000?
No.
Questions persist about how Mr. Banks uses his wealth, but he denied to me allegations reported by this programme in July that he bribed a minister in Lesotho to secure a mining licence. Realistically, in Folkestone and elsewhere, getting local parties to sack their Tory member won't be easy. But at a crucial time in the Brexit drama, Banks is rattling some pro-EU MPs and may discourage others from joining his so-called dirty dozen.
Well, one person who's got to know Arron Banks reasonably well is Russia's ambassador to the UK. Alexander Yakovenko has met the Brexit backer several times. So at one of his regular press conferences today, I asked him why he was so keen to help Mr. Banks.
It's not about him. All of us are meeting just almost every day with those who are supporting Brexit and those who are opposing Brexit, you know, to a certain extent. And he was one of the persons, you know, whom we meet because, you know, I was curious why he's giving so much money, you know, for that exercise.
Have you held 4 meetings with anyone who opposed Brexit?
No, it's just opposing Brexit. He was thinking about the. He was first saying about the possible economic cooperation with Russia, and we directed him to the trade mission. I was curious, you know, when he met Trump, and I was just curious, you know, what was the outcome of the meeting, you know, and he just explained, you know, what was the purpose of the meeting and you know why they met. So that's it, and it has.
Why were you curious about that meeting?
I mean, listen, I'm not going to. I probably satisfied with the answer, you know, about Brexit and